have a neighborhood leader packet that anybody who's interested in cleaning up their neighborhood or anything about other Brightside projects can request a neighborhood leader packet. So we have those things available. Anybody can get tools, trash bags, gloves to do a cleanup on their block or in their neighborhood. If you register your cleanup before the end of April or the first week in May this year, you can get the flowers for planting on public property. In the Skinker to Bolivar neighborhood, I know it's always Andy Cross that orders the flowers for the neighborhood, and they do a lot of planting at Four Corners and things like that. But like I said, we have 120,000 flowers that we want to plant this year. So if you want any flowers for the public spaces in your particular neighborhood, please contact Brightside, because we want to be able to be a resource that you can use to clean up and beautify your neighborhood. It's what we've been doing for 40 years. And while our programs have evolved over the years, the most important part is helping you clean up your neighborhood. In addition to the regular cleanups in the spring, we also have a program that provides Missouri native plants for public spaces. It's a program called Neighbors Naturescaping. And I say that very slowly because it's very hard to say. Neighbors Naturescaping. And with that program, you can request Missouri native perennials, grasses, shrubs, and trees for planting on public spaces. And there are lots of places around the city that neighborhood groups have adopted. They come up with an idea and then they request the plants from Operation Brightside. We're also known now as Brightside St. Louis, but I'm old school, so it's a little of both to me. But through Neighbors Naturescaping, you can get all of these supplies. The application packets are available. This year it'll be May 12th that you can request a Neighbors Naturescaping application, and we'll have a kickoff meeting to explain how it works. And then the applications are due this year, August 12th, which is a Friday. And then the selection committee visits all of the sites and reviews all of the proposals. And then they make the announcement in mid-September. And then the plant material is available for a fall planting. This year it'll be September 30th and October 1st. And because maintenance is such an important component of improving the public spaces, you can request up to 40% of the total $1,500 project for maintenance supplies, tools, hoses, things like that you're going to need to care for your garden, get your plants established, make the long-term commitment to do that. And so I know there are a lot of community vegetable gardens around, but having pollinator plants are essential for community gardens. So just keep in mind, even if you have a food garden or you don't, pollinators are extremely important. And that's what we're trying to do, is bring more pollinators to our city. So the total request for a Neighbors Naturescaping application can be up to $1,500. 60% of that has to be for the native plant material. Up to 40% can be for the supplies you need and the tools you need to care for that. And then to help groups learn about it, we have the St. Louis Urban Gardening Symposium. And I know that sounds fancy, but it's really just so that we can call it slugs. And so slugs this year will be on Saturday, June 4th. And we have two awesome speakers that are going to be there. Gerardo Camillo is a researcher at St. Louis University, and he's been doing studies about bees in our community and native bees. So it's really fascinating what he's been learning. And then just blanked on his name. Scott Woodbury is the horticulturist at the Shaw Nature Reserve, and he's also going to be a speaker at the gardening symposium on June 4th. And these guys are amazing resources. And if you're interested in neighbors naturescaping, then there's no charge for the symposium. If you'd rather just pay and not participate in neighbors naturescaping, we'll charge you $10. So it's just a pretty easy thing to do. So that's what we have going on. And then of course we have our graffiti removal program that is ongoing. So if anybody gets graffiti on their property or they see graffiti, they can report it to the Citizen Service Bureau, and we will come out and remove it. If it's on a painted surface, we'll paint over it. If it's on a brick or concrete surface, then we'll power wash it off, as long as we can safely access it. There are places that graffiti's put up and, along dilapidated fire escapes or, bridges over highways. We can't safely get to that. So unfortunately, that's not something we can do. And then when it's graffiti we can't get to, then we ask the city building division to cite the property owner and encourage them to remove the graffiti. And then of course, Brightside is responsible for the outreach and education for recycling. And the most important thing that we know now is that currently the city is not collecting recycling separate from the trash in the alley dumpsters. And that's been a real struggle for people, but they have continued to service the drop-off locations that they have had in place for probably 20 years now. Right here in our area, we have the firehouse on McCausland at West Park. We have the firehouse on Shawmut and Ridge, and we have Crossroads School that has drop-off locations. And we're hoping that the city is able to get recycling put back in place. We were all very hopeful that it was just going to be a short term. I think it's probably most likely it'll be sometime later this spring or summer before it actually gets fully addressed. But if you're like me, you've made a commitment to recycle over the years. And so instead of taking it to the dumpster in my alley, now I just put it in my car and take it to Crossroads School or the firehouse, one of the firehouses, because it's important. And I think we all share that commitment to environmental sustainability. And we all learned a long time ago that recycling does make a difference. And so the city's struggling with how to figure out how to do it again, because part of the issue has been people dumping garbage into the recycling, whether it's somebody just throwing a bag of garbage in there or trash, it can contaminate the whole load. Or they just throw things that don't belong in the recycling, it can contaminate the whole load. And, when they were collecting it separately, they'd go down the alley and pick up all of the blue dumpsters. And then if two of the dumpsters had stuff in there that could contaminate the load, then it all gets wasted. And so the city has to figure out a way to do it so that when all of us are working so hard to get good recyclables, that it can't be contaminated by one or two people that just made a mistake or didn't care. And so I know they're really trying hard to figure that out. And so our role is to help people continue to maintain the good habits of recycling and separating the recycling in your home. Brightside offers free recycling bins that it's just an in-home bin that you just call us and tell us you want one, and then you can come over and pick it up from our office. We're located right next to our demonstration garden, which is at the corner of Kings Highway and Vandeventer. And they're great. You just put it right next to your kitchen trash can if you don't have one, and then you make that decision right there. Oh, this is recyclable. I can put this in here, and then you just take it with you to the firehouse or to Crossroads School for now, and then soon, fingers crossed, we'll be able to take it back to our dumpster very soon. So that's everything I have right now, but I expect there may be a few questions.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Mary Lou? If you can, raise your hand in the chat or maybe get our attention.
Dan Sush has got his hand up.
Oh, there he is. Yep.
Yeah, I've been going to Crossroads or the firehouse on McCausland. But there doesn't seem to be a dumpster for yard waste. Are they mixing up the yard waste with everything else, or is there some means to have the yard waste? Is there the ability to add a yard waste dumpster to those locations?
That's a great question, Dan. Thank you. Yard waste is still collected in your alley. The only thing they were commingling was the trash and the recycling. The green bins, they suspend collection during January and February after the Christmas trees have been put out. But yard waste is being collected again in your alley. They started the 1st of March.
All right, thank you.
And we don't have too many people on the meeting today, so I am just letting people unmute themselves. Honestly, if anybody right now has another question, they can jump on and unmute themselves.
Hi,
Anybody?
Arlene Webb.
Hi, Arlene.
Hi, Mary Lou. There has been much discussion among neighbors in the neighborhood about paying for recycling when you're not getting it. We pay for recycling, we pay for trash pickup. And I have heard from a number of neighbors who are very sincerely against paying for recycling while it is being commingled with trash. Is this being addressed in any way? Has anyone I'm just curious what maybe the city response is, if anyone. I don't know if you would happen to know that, Mary Lou, but I presume nobody's refuse bill is going to get lowered.
Arlene, that's a good comment. I would agree with you. I would be totally surprised if they changed the amount that they're collecting now, because the thing to remember is it's a comprehensive waste service that the city is providing. So whether you're putting it in the dumpster, whether you're putting it in the brown dumpster or the blue dumpster, they're still actually collecting it. It's not being recycled currently, but they have the drop-off centers, and that is what that's how they're actually doing recycling. For the people who have roll carts, that's still being collected separately because they put them out on 2 separate days. So that recycling service and that trash service is still in place. And then the other part of the trash bill that we pay covers bulk pickup, which is once a month. And you can put up to 3 large items per household per month out for bulk pickup. You can also take bulk items or trash to the city transfer station. You can do that up to 12 times a year. And then as Dan was talking about, you also have a yard waste collection that occurs weekly for 10 months of the year. So it really is a comprehensive service. It's not just recycling.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there any way that we could get some kind of a information out so that I can actually remember what to say to neighbors? Because I haven't really had much of an answer other than, gosh, I don't think they're gonna lower your bill. But I didn't, I didn't think to say all these things that you just said.
If you want to send me an email, I would be happy to give you those talking points.
Thank you. I
And
appreciate that.
if anybody else has questions that I didn't answer tonight or want to follow up, my email is marylou, MARYLOU @brightsidestl.org. And you can always pick up the phone and call us. We're at 772-4646. You can, and our website is full of information. It's brightsidestl.org. But we're really here to help neighbors make their neighborhood better. So any way that we can do that, please feel free to call us, to email us, to check out our website, stop by the Brightside office. We're here to help you.
Okay, do you have any other questions for Mary Lou? That was great. We live in a beautiful neighborhood, and so anything that we can, do to keep it beautiful is important.
Well, and I will tell you, I really appreciate this opportunity because, and I will say to follow up on your comment, Mike, it's a beautiful neighborhood because people have made a commitment over the years to make it so. It doesn't just happen. It's neighbors who have worked together for years, neighbors who have made the commitment to make it better. And that's why we can all be proud of where we live.
100%. Yeah, everything, it takes work. It takes work and commitment and yeah. So we appreciate what you do and for that purpose, absolutely.
Well, thank you all for this opportunity.
Okay, well, thank you. And moving on tonight, we're going to turn now to the April elections. What we have, Heather's on the line. I know that she has some thoughts about Prop R. I think we might actually have a couple other speakers if they're interested. I'll share my thoughts real quick. So basically there's going to be 2 elections in April. One is April 19th is going to be my election. And we'll talk about that maybe a little bit later. But before that, on April 5th, there is a citywide special election. There's just 2 things on the ballot. One is Prop R, which is the charter that, like I said, Heather talked a little bit about. And then the other is a bond election. And I'll just mention real quick that this bond election, I wanted to kind of figure out a little bit about what was going on before this meeting to share. And what I found out was it did get past the Board of Aldermen unanimously, which I think tells you something that there's, pretty good support regarding it. And also, if you look in the actual statute, and or the bill itself, it lists out the categories that the money for this bond issue is going to be spent on. And it's my understanding that, you know, these categories, these expenses, you know, these things were, these priorities were arrived at, you know, after, I guess, a lot of input from Citizens Committee. The Citizens Capital Committee met and identified, you know, needs of the community. So I'm going to be voting yes on this bond issue. I think that you know, this is something that a lot of cities use bonds like this to finance their capital expenditures and their infrastructure projects. And like I said, the items that we're spending money on in this bill, you know, were arrived at with citizen input. So I think then turning to Prop R, I'll let Heather expound a little bit further on it, but, you know, real quick, my just initial thought is, you know, there's honest debate about whether it makes sense for alder people or legislators to draw their own lines. And that's what Prop R does. It does a few different things, one of which, and the important thing that the backers are proponents of, is making it so the Board of Aldermen would, going forward, not be able to draw their own boundary lines. Instead, it would go to this citizen commission, and it's kind of complicated how the citizens commission's picked, and maybe Heather will address that. But the other thing that it does, and this is the part that kind of gives me the most concern, is there's a provision in there that says that any provision that's enacted by the voters that has to do with voting methods, any changes to that must also then be submitted to the voters to institute a change. You know, as a lawyer, that feels just a little cumbersome to me, because coming out of what just happened in my election, where, you know, there was a little bit of ambiguity around Prop D and about whether or not there should be a Democrat or a Republican on the ballot next to our names, you know, I feel like it's really just setting up situations where if we're needing to go back and make fixes to legislation, and every little thing we have to do, if we have to send it to the voters, it just might make things a little more complicated and unwieldy. So that's why I'm voting against Prop R. It's really just, I think that it's kind of unnecessarily complicated, and I think that it ties our hands. But I'm going to turn it over to Heather, because I think she might have some other reasons too.
Thanks, Mike. I don't know if Mary Lou's still on, but thank you, Mary Lou, too. She's been such a great resource, as Brightside St. Louis has been. And I did put a note in the chat too, just about that bond measure. I just want to let folks know that there's no levy increase with that bond measure. It's based on current property tax levy. So that board bill's available. There were public hearings. And as Mike said, it passed unanimously through the Board of Aldermen. So I was on the board. I did vote for it. I was on the Ways and Means Committee when it came to us for the hearing. So if anybody wants to ask me questions about that later, feel free to shoot me an email. But in terms of Prop R, yeah, thank you for the chance to talk about this, because there was a lot of talk about this last year leading up to the redistricting process. And then since then, we haven't really heard very much about it, but it will be on the April ballot. And I, like many others, think that we need to reform the process for redistricting. And I think that it should be done independently of the Board of Aldermen. However, this particular proposition, I think, is something that frankly, we will regret passing if it does, because it does not do, I think, what a lot of us hoped and expected. I think having an independent demographer with resident advice is extremely important. You need to have somebody who knows about maps and statistics, because really this is a numbers game. But then you also need to have folks on the ground weighing in, because you can draw the lines, as we've seen, in a variety of different ways. And it's really important to protect voting communities. And an independent demographer isn't necessarily going to know that, you know, this particular park or this particular neighborhood is really shaped by folks who live here or there, you know, who really values what happens in this particular commercial district, for example. You know, we can look at neighborhood lines on a map, but that doesn't necessarily tell you, you know, who votes with who, or like I said, which places are of historical significance or cultural significance to a community and that need to be all kept within the same boundaries. So I very much agree that having resident input in that process is extremely important, and that there should be an independent demographer. What we are voting on in April does not require an independent demographer. it still leaves a lot up in the hands of the Board of Aldermen, and it gives us a process and a timeline that is extremely cumbersome. And if you just even think back to the Board of Freeholders, the Board of Electors, which was never actually seated, they never met. And this process actually has many more layers to it than that did. And it has a much shorter and has a very short timeline, because essentially we get the data, and then a 9-member commission has to be put together, and then they are in charge of drawing the lines. They can hire an independent demographer if they would like, but there's nothing in there that requires that. And the technical expertise that they do get, either from the city councilor's office or from the planning development agency, those folks are politically appointed, the heads of those departments. So there's still a lot of, this still is not an independent process, I think. So I'm just want to walk through some of the highlights. And if folks have, other questions, I'm happy to either take those tonight or later. But so part of this is redistricting. As Mike said, there's another part in here that essentially enshrines Prop D and the charter and requires a public vote if we want to tinker with any of it. And some of the other things that came out of approval voting last year, because it sets up a nonpartisan primary and then the general. And, I think that's a good idea. There are definitely some things to iron out. For example, if you have 2 people in the primary, those same 2 people have to run again in a general, and you can have 2 different results. So things like that, I think, just need to be worked out, and the Board of Aldermen is the place to do that. But this would say we've got to go back to the public and explain all of this and have people vote possibly multiple times on what our election laws look like. But in terms of the redistricting piece, and then there's also an ethics piece, conflict of interest as well for the aldermen. But first, for the redistricting, it would set up a 9-member commissioner. Like I said, there's no requirement for an independent demographer. The other thing that concerns me is that it conflicts out just about anybody with any experience, because anybody who has been a candidate, worked for a candidate, anybody who's worked for a campaign or a campaign, anyone who's worked for the city or has had a contract with the city cannot sit on this commission. And you're going to you want folks who have some sort of experience working in the city. Our city is shrinking. The number of people we have with expertise in this area, we want to be able to tap into them. They would all, none of those folks would be able to sit down here. Also, as well as no lobbyists. I totally get that. However, we also have folks who might be a registered lobbyist for the Sierra Club, or maybe they're a registered lobbyist for NARAL, and they happen to also really care about the city, and so they would be conflicted out too. So I'm a little concerned that we have narrowed the pool of folks right off the bat that would be qualified to sit here. The timing is, the other thing is those 9 members, 4 of them are going to be randomly selected by a 5-member oversight committee that is approved by the Board of Aldermen. And then those 5 members, there's a process for selecting those 4, and then those 4 select the remaining 5. The timing of this is 1 month after we get the census data. Now, I know last year hopefully was an anomaly, but last year we didn't get the census data until August. Normally, I think we would get it much earlier in the year, but essentially this process requires at least it's going to take at least 5 months. If everything moves, pretty quickly, it's going to be 5 months from the time we get the data to when this commission is actually meets for the first, meets and gets their job done. So that's a pretty tight timeline. This year we didn't get the data till August, and the deadline was in December. So that's something else to think about here. So like I said, you've got an oversight committee. The Board of Aldermen selects the committee of 5. So that makes it already kind of a political process. Also, people apply. There's a 30-day window for people to apply to be on the commission. The aldermen get that list, and they can strike any name off the list that they don't like. And we have to have at least one candidate applicant from every ward. And if there isn't one, then the alderman from that ward gets to appoint somebody. So there's, as much as we make this an independent citizens commission, we still have a lot of room for political favors in here. The 9 people who sit on that commission can't run for office for a year after that. Again, when I just think about the folks who are involved in city government, there are a lot of folks who have experience, are qualified, and they may work in city government before or after this, and saying that none of these people can intermix, I think could tie our hands a little bit. The other thing is this oversight committee, if this commission doesn't get their work done in time by December 31st, the oversight commission can make a map. This oversight commission is made up of retired judges who can live in St. Louis County or St. Louis City, as well as some city employees. So we've already exempted a whole bunch of people out who can't sit on the commission, but if the commission doesn't make a map, these 5 people who don't meet the rules to be on the commission can end up drawing the map. So that seems a little contradictory there as well. And then the other piece of this, the Board of Aldermen conflicts. One of the provisions in here, so right now, if you have a conflict and you're an alder person, you have to disclose your conflict, but you technically could still vote on something. So this would say you can't vote if you have a conflict. That makes a lot of sense. However, the person who could prosecute you is the attorney who's hired by the Board of Aldermen. So there's a huge conflict right there, that the person in charge of holding aldermen accountable is hired by the alderman. So it puts the attorney in a compromising position, and it makes the job of alderman very difficult, because the person we're supposed to go to, shouldn't say we, I'm not an alder person anymore, the person they're supposed to go to is the person who can also prosecute them. So you don't get legal counsel anymore either. So that creates a major problem. And I think, the other one after that was really what Mike mentioned. The only other thing I will mention, everybody's thinking, oh, this doesn't go into effect for 10 years. Well, those provisions about Board of Aldermen conflicts would go into effect right away, or I shouldn't say right away, but whatever the provision is, it's not going to be 10 years. The other piece in there too is an attempt to eliminate this revolving door that we see a lot in Jeff City between elected officials and lobbyists. And I think that's a great idea. We need to work on that, the revolving door effect. So what this would say is, for 1 year after you've left office, you could do no lobbying, either as a registered lobbyist, or, you don't even, as a registered lobbyist, or even if you don't register as a lobbyist, you can't show up and essentially advocate in front of any agency or department of the city. There are some other caveats in there as well. But I think the thing to remember is, in this next year, we need to shed 14 alderpersons. We are going from a board of 28 to 14, and a whole bunch of folks need to find you're going to need to find other jobs. And if you've been an alderperson for a long time, your area of expertise is city government. And we're going to say in this first year after instituting ward reduction that, you can't go work in a whole bunch of jobs that you would otherwise be qualified for because of this. So I think we can be a little bit more precise in our language around this to get at what we want, which is a better form for redistricting, and we want better ethics rules at the Board of Aldermen. I'm in favor of all of those things, and I'm happy to work on them. What we got in Prop R, I don't think meets those criteria. So I'll just leave it at that. It's 8 pages of very small print. So I know a lot of you signed the petition that had 3 or 4 I guess it's 5 bullet points on it. There are 8 more pages of small print that I just encourage everybody to take a look at before you go into the booth on April 5th. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, and I put the dates for absentee ballots in the chat. You can actually vote now. So you can request an absentee ballot up to March 23rd, and last day to vote absentee in person downtown is April 4th, day before the election. Does anybody have any questions about Prop R or the bond issue for that matter? Anything on the April 5th election at all?
No, we need Heather on our meeting this Saturday for the St. Louis Democratic Central Committee.
I don't know, Heather, what do you think? It was pretty, yeah.
I'll still
agree.
be in Florida. Is it on Zoom? If it's on Zoom, I'll join you.
It's on Zoom. I'm going to send it to you.
All right. Well, we will do elected officials next. I'll kind of talk at the end. I'll hang around and answer some questions. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard was actually, we just go with an order of appearance. Alderwoman, do you have anything you'd like to say today?
No, I was just here listening in and, here any questions that did come up. I'm sorry, I had to turn my camera off because I had to pick my daughter up from work. So that's what you hear in the background. But yeah, I'm just here as a reference and standing in the gap, and was glad to see Heather because we missed her. And I put my information in the chat. So if anybody needs me in the interim until Mike takes his seat, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Wonderful. Thank you, Alderwoman. Thank you for coming too. We appreciate you being around.
No problem.
Next up, we have my good friend, Senator Carla May. Senator May, would you have anything to say?
Of course, I have a whole lot to say. Listen, no. Good evening, everybody. We have a lot going on. You know, this is 2022 election year. And so we have to understand, we just heard, our Alderwoman Heather talk about Prop R, and our committee man talk about, Proposition 1. Those are going to be on April the 2nd ballot. And so, am I right? Is that April the 2nd?
April the 5th.
April the 5th. Okay, I'm getting it mixed up with August the 2nd. And we have another election that's happening on August the 2nd. So I don't want people to forget about this year is an election year. And let's talk about what's happening this year. You have the even number Senate seats are up for re-election. I am also up for re-election in the 4th senatorial district, and I will appreciate all of your support. You also have all of these state rep seats are up right now for re-election. You have your congressional district seats are up for re-election all across the state, and I think we're all in the 1st congressional district, so that's up for re-election. You have a U.S. Senate seat that's also up for re-election. We have a crowded Democratic field and a crowded Republican field. So that's something we need to look at. And we want to make sure that we can get, try to take it as a Democrat, take that seat. So we really want to be advocating and campaigning to get, our Democrats to the polls on August the 2nd, intentionally, because we really want to make sure that we get a lot of people out to vote. You have some other propositions that will be on the ballot that the legislature is putting out there for August the 2nd. So we're going to watch for those. We're going to talk more about those when the legislature ends on May 13th. And we know that those measures actually made it out of the process. And so we want to be talking about those too. They're coming up also on August the 2nd. So I just wanted to put that out there to let you know all of that is coming up. I also think there is a one last food drive. I don't know, the Urban League will put that out, but I think that's on March the 26th. They're doing that huge food drive once again. And so those are basically the things that I have coming up. We also have, when is the special election? We don't want to, did Mike, did you give the date for the special election? And we want to make sure that people are aware.
Yeah, I was going to talk about that at the end, but it's April 19th. But we can't
April
tell them
19th.
enough.
So that's 3 elections this year. And those are important because, when we talk about numbers and we talk about people getting to the poll, that's our voice. And we really need to get people out. This is crucial because what we call this is the midterm elections. And when I say we need to show big in the midterm, we really do, especially on those U.S. seats. That's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Senator May?
Oh, one other thing.
Yep.
In May, we're doing town hall meetings. So you will be receiving something in the mail. I'm getting on the ground just to talk about state money because there's a whole lot of money that has come in. And we're going to be talking about the how individuals and businesses can access this new money. They got the infrastructure dollars, they got the ARPA funds. We had the governor had to put out a plan. They put 20 million in for nonprofits, money in for small businesses. So we want to make sure that people in our area are aware of those dollars as well. So those will be happening in May. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. If there's no other questions, we have Alderwoman Hubbard did put some information in the chat about it, of some events she's throwing. So take a look at that. And yeah, and I will just also echo Senator May's comments about the importance of, the August elections this year with midterms. It's going to be important that Senate seat. Let's face it, Eric Greitens might be the Republican nominee, and if he is, then I am one of the Democrats that really do believe that I think that seat is very takeable, especially if Eric Greitens is the Republican nominee. So I'm going to try to do some sirens passing by. I'm going to try to do a little bit more to get some Senate candidates to come to our upcoming meetings. I know we've had a few people ask about them. And, you know, there were a couple early favorites, but I kind of feel like the field's a little more open now. So, you know, like Senator Bay said, we should kind of take our time and you know, look at who we have and who we'd want to put up. Next up, I just want to talk just briefly about my election. I don't think we have any other elected officials here or any other candidates. Just briefly, I am, as we said, I am running for election on April 19th, special election for aldermen. I think there was an email that went out from the ward that said the election date was April 12th. That was a typo. It is April 19th. As far as absentee voting and that stuff, absentee voting begins March 21st. The filing for candidates actually closes this Friday, March 18th. So after March 18th, I'll know, you know, who if anybody else has filed. But then absentee voting actually begins Monday. So you can go downtown anytime and vote in person absentee. Or you can, you know, request an absentee ballot. We've kind of done the same way we've done the last few elections. And you can request in-person absentee all the way up until, or you can request an absentee ballot till April 6th. And then last day to vote absentee in person is April 18th. And then the election date is April 19th. So I'm going to copy that in the chat right now. Moreover, more fun news is, as far as save the dates, please, I have 2 events planned in the next month. One will be a family fun day event on Saturday, April 9th. And I'll get more information out as far as location and whatnot soon, but definitely something kid-friendly with some entertainment. We're working on getting some food and entertainment for some kiddos, and hopefully we have some weather like we did today. It'll be nice, something outside, but I certainly would like to meet some families, young families in the ward, and looking forward to that event to do so. And then the next event is April 7th. I'm going to have a fundraiser. Just a traditional, good old-fashioned political fundraiser. I've talked to a few of you guys already about it, and I'm making my rounds and making my calls, and I'll be calling some other folks for it. So looking forward to seeing some people in person at those events. Hopefully they're a little bit of fun too. And then gearing up, you know, for the election on the 19th. Only other kind of substantive thing I'll say, you know, one of the kind of parts of my campaign that I've talked about before, and one of my parts of my platform is helping entrepreneurs in the city. And I've got some good news right before the meeting tonight, but the St. Louis Development Corporation just announced a deal where they're going to be using space in some St. Louis public schools that are no longer being used to create empowerment centers for local small businesses, especially on the north side. You know, talking to entrepreneurs, a lot of times they just need kind of direct technical assistance. Sometimes, you know, things like mailboxes, computers, facilities, meeting rooms, that sort of thing. You know, using resources that the city has just kind of laying dormant and letting entrepreneurs use them to help support their businesses, I think is a really great idea. I was looking forward to kind of, I don't know, working on projects like that on the Board of Aldermen, but I was happy to see, like I said, that they're starting that, and looks like they've done something already similar. So that's all I kind of have. Like I said, if there's anybody else who would like to speak, I know Newton put in the chat that Mr. Scoggin might want to speak for his department. If he does, he can welcome to unmute himself. And I'm going to put the dates of my events in the chat. It'll be Saturday, April 2nd for a family day, and then April 7th for a fundraiser. Does anybody have any questions? Does anybody have anything else they would like to share with the group in general? I know it's kind of a short night tonight, but we had a nice weather and the holiday, so I think it kind of kept turnout down.
I hope everybody can see that big old moon behind me.
Is that what that is? I thought that was a street
Wow,
light.
it's gorgeous. I'm coming outside
It's
to take
the
a picture
moon.
right now. Oh my God.
Wow. Is today full?
It's full.
Very cool.
And this morning it was huge and orange. So if you're up and out at 7 a.m., take a look to the west and see it.
Is this, do we have any astrology people here? Is this the Virgo full moon? I know it was the Pisces new moon a couple weeks ago. No one? Okay. I go through phases with the astrology, so I'm in one now. Well, I'm stopping the live stream, but anybody